Hi, I'm Astrologer Penny Dix. Welcome back to my channel, Astrology by Penny. And today, this is another in my series called Penny Dix in Conversation With. And I'm in conversation with today, Sara Smith. Sara, hypnotherapist, channeler. Welcome to my channel and welcome to what we hope is going to be an interesting video where we will get to know a little bit more about Sara, and I'm going to have a little look at her chart and give you a little bit of astrology information, which I think is very interesting and shows why it's not always that easy to read everybody's chart. And I think for all of you out there, it might be quite interesting to see why I find it so hard to read Sara's chart, and it's not because I know her. So we'll come to that towards the latter half of this interview. But first of all, I just want to say hello, welcome Sara, and please just introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Sara Smith, hypnotherapist, channeler. Recently started a channel with Penny called Channeling by Penny and Sara, which hopefully some of you have subscribed to and hopefully more of you will subscribe to.
How are you enjoying it?
It's been an ordeal.
I think it has, hasn't it?
Yes, because I'm not a performer. I've never really sort of done anything like it before. I suppose it was all part of pushing myself and just continuing self-development. I think, unless you step out of your comfort zone, you're never really going to know what you can do. And obviously to convey the messages that are channeled from BlueMan, the blue light being that I've had in my life for as long as I can remember. It was really difficult to know how to actually convey those messages without sort of doing something like the channel. And obviously Penny has got a successful astrology YouTube channel, so she said, well, let's give this a go.
So perhaps before we get into who Sara is and how we met and all of that, perhaps you could just explain a little bit more about BlueMan, because certainly when I first met you and we started talking, it was like I owned up to the fact that I am experiencing these blue light beings and these blue beams of light and orbs. And then when I watched the videos by Nancy Rebecca with Pam Gregory, the astrologer, and Nancy Rebecca also channels blue light beings, it gave me permission to come out. And so then I talked about it with Sara, who then said, well, actually, and I'm wondering how many of you out there actually are also having very similar experiences. And, please let me know in the chat if this is happening for you, because I just think it's a phenomena that is going to grow and grow and grow. But when did BlueMan first sort of connect with you, Sara?
In his sort of more physical form, I think I became aware of him nearly 2 years ago. But I then was conscious that he had been there throughout my life, guiding me, protecting me from certain situations, in the way that a lot of people describe a guardian angel, for example. And I think why he chose to sort of make himself in a much more visible physical form, I think, is because we are sort of moving towards this period of awakening, and he wanted really for me, Penny and others to start spreading the messages.
So is this Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind?
It might
because
be.
what you're describing, what I'm understanding from what you're saying, is that you physically can see him.
I
or
can.
Visually you can see him.
Or he, projects blue lights,
okay,
which I can see. And in fact, my cats can see as well. So, it's not me having a breakdown or something like that. It's actually something which my cats are very aware of as well. And they're very comfortable with his presence around. So,
how old were you when you were first aware of BM's presence?
I think I was probably about 6 or 7.
Wow.
Because I could actually see things then that other people couldn't see.
But you didn't know that till much later on?
No, I didn't. So I just thought, I could see that person that was there and other people couldn't see that person. But I thought it was all perfectly normal, and I thought, you know, sort of things like having these people that I could see was a normal thing. But then I learned it wasn't. But didn't really know at that age how to define it.
Did that isolate you, do you think?
No, I don't think it isolated me. I just think it gave me a little bit more awareness of what was going on and what was around us, and not really sort of accepting life at face value.
Because I guess what it shows to me is that from a very early age, you were already on a spiritual path.
I suppose so, yes, but I don't think I really defined it as such, or sort of understood the significance of it. But I think from about the age of 7, I was really interested in astrology, various phenomena. You know, I had a fascination with things that other children weren't really interested in. I wasn't sort of sitting there playing with dolls and things like that. If I wasn't out playing tennis, I was reading and I was learning about all these kinds of things, and you know, was really fascinated by sort of things like haunted houses and all kinds of things like that.
So you're a tennis fan?
I am.
Of course I know that, but I'm just, you know...
Yes, pretending you don't know.
Pretending I don't know. And I also want to just touch on the fact that you chose to train as a hypnotherapist, and what took you down that path, and what that was, how you felt that you could use your particular gifts. Excuse the background noises, but the cats have decided they're picking up the energy of what's going on in the room, and they're playing. They may even go whoosh across the camera. Who knows? So yes, so the hypnotherapy.
Yes, so I trained as a counsellor some years ago, and have always had people coming to me with their issues and wanting me to help them with their issues, and you know, uncover maybe the problems that they do have that they can't identify. So it seemed like a sort of natural progression to do that. But also, I've always been very interested in the past life regression side of hypnotherapy as well, which I think is absolutely phenomenal for uncovering, you know, sort of patterns of behaviour that people have had in previous lives, sort of karmic debts, things that they're carrying forward that need to be solved, all those sort of issues. So it was a really sort of combination of previous sort of experiences that sort of led me down this path. And you know, I think it's something which I've always loved, things like tennis, where you never know everything, where you're always constantly learning, you're constantly striving to improve, you're never an expert. You've always got to keep learning, and you've got to keep educating yourself. So I think that was something about it that I found attractive as well.
So at this point in your life, how do you see it unfolding? Because I do know that you've worked, I suppose, what do we call it, in the corporate world?
Yes.
And you know, so I'm aware of that as your background. And I actually met Sara because she was part of a group that myself and a colleague were training in Reiki. And so I attuned Sara all the way through to Reiki Master. And so the interesting thing, I don't know what you feel about this, Sara, with Reiki, is I think when you work as a Reiki practitioner or teacher, especially when you're a Reiki Master teacher, it creates a bond with students that you attune, which is just almost like an umbilical cord. It's a kind of, almost like a psychic bond that just connects you. So that how I would explain it is that I feel I have a responsibility towards Sara's well-being because I am her Reiki master. It doesn't mean I'm better than her or worse than her or anything. It's just that I feel I have a responsibility towards her spiritual development. So I'm just wondering how it feels from your side of things, and how that, what I've just said, what that kind of, how that resonates with you, what that makes you feel, think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting because when we met, it was 3 stages, wasn't it?
Yes, Reiki 1, Reiki
Yeah,
2
yeah,
and Reiki
yeah.
3, yeah.
And I think right at the beginning, I had no knowledge. I'd never met Penny before, had no knowledge of her background, her history, anything. And pretty quickly into the sessions, started channeling her late mother, which was a phenomenal experience. And I remember seeing her looking incredibly freaked out because...
Me being freaked out.
Yes, incredibly
I
freaked
was.
out, yeah.
As was my colleague who
Yes.
also had known my mother. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was able to, authentically sort of portray her health issues, for example. And,
You described the stroke that she'd had.
yes, and I have phenomenally low blood pressure. So low, doctors have to take it 3 times to make sure I'm actually alive. So for me to actually...
I think she is.
I am at the moment, I think, yes. To actually have the feeling of blood pressure rising, my whole body was heating up and the blood was rushing really quickly around was absolutely phenomenal. And I was able to correctly identify what had happened.
Yeah, because actually my mother was disabled by a bleed on the brain, so not a clot, a bleed caused by extremely high blood pressure, and then she was disabled from that, and hence I became her full-time carer, moved to Gozo, looked after her, and that's actually ultimately what brought me together with Sara. But what's interesting is that my mother still uses Sara as her kind of conduit, vessel, channel to get through to me. It's as if I seem to be just devoid of being able to connect with my mother at times. I think because I've had a difficult year with surgery and all the rest of it. But I mean, this year we're talking about
Last year,
2024. She used you on several occasions, didn't she, to get messages through to me, which was quite phenomenal.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there were times when maybe I just wasn't picking up, and she would do things like knock things over, or her favourite Julio Iglesias would play on the radio or the TV, and suddenly that was like, whoa, she's trying to make contact with me. So I think that was something which was an incredibly strange experience at the beginning. But I think that was something that maybe sort of started off the bond between us, and she selected me as the person to communicate through for some reason. Maybe a mutual love of Rafael Nadal and tennis.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
and
She would have loved the chance to talk to you about the tennis, because my mother was an absolute avid tennis fan. I mean, I am too, but not to the extent that my mother was or Sara is. I love tennis. I love watching it. I'd love to be able to play it, but I can't. I have no eyeball contact.
No, hand-eye coordination.
Oh, hand-eye coordination, that too. Yes. But I believe you're actually quite a good tennis player, aren't you?
I can't claim that in public, I'm afraid, because there might be people out there that will try and disprove it.
Oh, right. But it's a game you love, isn't it?
I do,
love to play.
I do, yes.
Yeah. So how is your life unfolding from this point? How do you see it? Well, has BlueMan given you any clues as to how things are going to unfold?
That's an incredibly open question.
Okay, maybe it's something you don't wish to answer. You don't have to.
No, I mean, I obviously see myself moving from Gozo in the near future. I can't cope with the cold winters.
No.
So, and no central heating.
I can agree with that.
I'm a warm weather person, so I need to...
We're sitting here with blankets.
So, that's one thing. I think that, the hypnotherapy practice is developing nicely. Obviously, our channel is developing and a lot of projects in the pipeline. I've got a lot of writing projects coming through, lots of different ideas and things that I want to do. So, I think that's kind of the future, and some travel. Love to do some more travel.
If I asked you the question, who is Sara? How would you describe yourself?
Wow. Not quite sure how to answer that one.
Again, it's not mandatory.
Well, I suppose.
Do you have children? Do you have a husband? Who is Sara?
Yes, I do have 3 adult children who live in the UK. I have 6 rescue cats.
Yes.
So animal rescue has always been a big part of my life. I rescued my first dog when I was age 6. I rescued a little dog from Malta, the bigger island to Gozo, when I was 18. Spent my life savings on bringing her back to the UK. And she was an amazing little family dog for 16 years.
Wow.
So there was that sort of strange connection with Malta. And in fact, I named her Gozo.
Oh no!
So, yeah, so that was that strange connection.
Wow.
I think that I've always loved travel, always enjoyed travel, always enjoyed just trying to continuing to develop and evolve as a person, not wanting to sort of stay stagnating in one place and just doing one thing with my life, but just really want to keep exploring and learning.
And I mean, without giving any secrets away, Sarah has come up with some very interesting ideas for us to work on in the future, collaborate on. And so they are in the pipeline and sort of behind the scenes projects that we're going to develop together. And of course, you are going to be leaving Gozo at some point. And do you have plans as when that's going to happen yet?
Not exactly, but fairly imminently.
Right, because it's too cold.
Yeah, because it's too cold. So that means we're going to have to make some more videos and explore some of the things we want to explore here fairly rapidly.
Yeah. And I also think that it's going to be super interesting when we are both in different countries, because we can still, because of communication and internet and videos and Zoom and all these kind of things, we can still do these. We can still do everything. We can.
Definitely.
It doesn't stop us.
Yeah.
But I mean, in some ways, this kind of sitting next to each other conversation is unusual nowadays, probably for social media, because if people are going to interview someone, they do it on Zoom or one of those kind of platforms. So the fact that we're sitting next to each other, also I don't technically really know how to do it on another kind of platform, but
we'll have to learn.
We're going to teach ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. So anything you want to say before I have a quick look at your chart?
Well, I was just going to say that, it looks like we may be going to different countries. So we're going to have lots more sort of interesting little videos for people that we can make.
And I just have to say something, because this happens to me. As Sarah was talking and saying different countries, behind her there was a shaft of blue light. Now, when I get these shafts of blue light around Sarah, it's like a confirmation from the blue light beings for me that what she is saying, or what we are saying, is as it is what is going to unfold. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Okay.
And any communications from BM in the last few days that you feel everyone would like to know about?
No, they've mainly been on a personal level. Although he is saying, "Oh, I did tell you, about the UK government and how things are looking a little bit
shaky."
Yes. So he did predict that. He's been saying that for some time.
That's true.
But then I do have to say that he's not overly fond of politicians as a whole. So
yes, well, maybe that's a rabbit hole we best avoid.
I think we had, yes.
Yes. Now, I thought it would be interesting to look at Sarah's chart, because obviously I know most of you that come to this channel are very interested in the astrological side of things. And are you happy for me to share your sun sign? And so Sarah is a sun Scorpio, and she doesn't know her accurate time of birth. We know her moon is in Aquarius, and the interesting thing is she has a rough idea of what her time of birth could be. And there is, as you know, because I've talked about it, and when you've come to me as clients that don't know the time of your birth, something called rectification, where you look at life events and you look at perhaps what's happening to a person now, and you can get a sense from where the current transits are, or where the transits were going back, especially using the outer planets, the big planets like Pluto, Uranus, Saturn. These slow moving planets can give great insight into helping with, in my terms, in my experience with rectification of a chart. And so I had two ideas of what Sarah's ascendant is. Now, I would be very interested for you astrologers out there, having heard Sarah speak and Sarah talk and everything, to give me your idea of what you think her rising sign might be, which is also the ascendant. We think it's either Gemini or Cancer. Now, I'm erring on the side of Gemini simply because, although she doesn't tick all the boxes for Gemini, I'm looking at her long-term relationship, and there was a Sagittarius, which puts Sagittarius on the descendant. And so because she has both Mars and Venus in Sagittarius on the descendant, which is the 7th house of significant relationships, then it feels to me that there is an energy around the character of somebody who was born under the sign of Sagittarius that you would be attracted to. Somebody who has a bit of get up and go, a bit who likes to travel, you may not have chosen people like that ultimately, but it may be what you've initially looked for. I don't know if you've got any comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're talking about what I understand is a typical Sagittarius. I wasn't with a typical Sagittarius, which is why the marriage didn't work.
Right. Interesting. Sarah, in the chart that I've actually, in this chart, I've decided to use a Gemini ascendant, simply because it puts transiting Pluto in her 9th house, and it'll be there now for the next 10 years, which I feel is appropriate for what I feel sort of intuitively is going to unfold for Sarah in terms of travel, relocation, change. Pluto on the midheaven would be really kind of extraordinary kind of transformation, and being in a position where she can, say through social media, say through YouTube, empower people through helping them learn about themselves, helping them transform, to transition to a more empowered part of themselves. So that for me feels kind of right. However, what is so interesting for me as an astrologer when I looked at your chart, and please tell me if any of this doesn't resonate or feels wrong, is that, and it may be partly because obviously Sarah is my friend as well as my kind of business partner, is that I look at her chart and I can't see anything. I don't know what's there. I don't know who Sarah is. And so I look at the chart and I think, I don't know who Sarah is. And I'm thinking, why don't I know who Sarah is? And yet, actually, Sarah, I think, if you don't mind me saying, is an interesting kind of conundrum, because she kind of presents a very contained, neutral stance, which can take a lot of projections from others who don't like it, that she's difficult to read. Would you say that is a fair assessment?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
And so I've seen Sarah on the receiving end of projections which are totally without any evidence and untrue and unfair. And it's been like, wow. So it's like, unless you put it out there and you say, this is me and I'm this and I'm that, people don't want to actually people don't like somebody who they can't get into. And I know, as you do now as well, that Sarah has really stepped outside her comfort zone. She has pushed and pushed and pushed herself to even do this interview, to actually make herself a little bit more public, which is why I now think I have the right ascendant of Gemini for her, because it's about communication. I think it's communication coming in later life, because Uranus is going to be moving into Gemini from Taurus. So she's had Uranus going through her 12th house, completely upsetting the apple cart of the way she works on an internal level, psychologically and psychically. and waking her up and making her aware that she has to wake others up. And when that Uranus comes up to her ascendant, and we may not have the time of birth correct, so the ascendant degree is a little bit kind of not certain, but I just feel that you will come out of the shadows, and you are going to shock and surprise people so much that I'm very glad you're in my life, and I'm very glad you're on my team. And as you know, I am most definitely on your team. I don't know if any of that makes any sense.
No, it's interesting. Interesting and,
Thought-provoking.
Feasible.
And also, we think her moon is in Aquarius, and that kind of fits in with this kind of distance, spiritual distance that Sara can kind of hold. I feel Sara is a very contained and, as I say, person who is not easy to read, and that is Aquarius. So that fits very much with the moon in Aquarius, and the intuitive bit is she can see, and she can see you. And I've had this experience with Sara. I know Sara reads people. Sara can read people like she reads the daily newspaper. And this can be very unnerving for people. And it has put people off. And I think it's probably distanced people from you in your life, hasn't it?
Yes, I think that they find it very scary if you actually really understand the things that they are trying to hide from you. That really freaks them out. And I think that if I look back earlier in life, I could really sort of cut through all the sort of front that somebody was providing and really sort of get to the core of them and what made them tick, and in some cases their deepest fears. So,
yes.
Which,
yes.
people are not comfortable with.
No.
And I think that I had that power to do that when I was much younger, and I think that made people really uncomfortable. And I think that I'm not the noisiest person in the room. I would rather sit back and observe and take in what is going on and assess what is going on than want to be front and centre, making a lot of noise. And again, I think some people aren't comfortable with that. No. They would rather have the people who are sort of up in your face and making a noise, because they can deal with that. They know how to handle people like that. But if you're actually sitting there and you know what they're thinking, what they're feeling, some people can sense that instinctively, and that makes them very uncomfortable. But it's not something. That's just me. That's not something I can turn off.
It's who you are.
Yeah.
And I think people, people either get Sara or they don't. And I think it is a minority of people that get Sara. And that's why I wanted to put her out here. And I have to say, I am full of admiration for her courage to actually let me even conduct this interview, because I know how incredibly private you are. Very private, very secretive. You could be a spy for all I know, and I'd never know.
Tosh, that'd be terribly exciting. But I think you're actually projecting your own kind of fantasy onto me there.
Quite possibly.
Sort of MI6 or
something like that. Yes.
But,
yes.
No, I can assure you I'm not. And I think sometimes people think I'm more interesting than I actually am. I think that I'm actually just quite ordinary. But
and we've been joined by one of our pussycats just as we start to bring things.
Felixina.
Come on, Felixina. Come and say hello, darling. Call her, see if she'll come over. Come on, Felixina.
Come and say hello to everyone.
Come and say hello. And whilst Felixina wanders across my lap to Sara, I want to just personally say to you, Sara, thank you so much for joining me today for this interview and for showing us a little bit more about who Sara Sands-Smith is. I want to wish you every success for your future, all your future endeavours. And I also want to say thank you very much, because Sarah has been one of a very small group of people who has been there for me through what was a very difficult year in 2024. And she has taken care of my fur babies and looked after them just better than I look after them, to be quite honest. And they've all been daily groomed and everything. And she's given me the support and, she's just given me the support that I needed going through what was a very difficult, physically challenging year last year. So thank you, Sarah. Okay. Thank you for all of that. And thank you for coming and agreeing to do this interview. I hope you've enjoyed it. I am going to be doing some more of these interviews. I've got some lined up with Alison Chester-Lambert, the astrologer, who has written the book An Easy Way to Learn Astrology. So they will be recorded very soon. I think there's going to be 3 separate sort of like half-hour videos that I'm going to do with her. And I just think it's quite a nice thing to do. I might even get Brandon Russ on here at some point, mightn't I, Brandon, to come and interview you instead of you interviewing me. So that could be quite a good way to go. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, I'm glad you got to meet Felixina. She is the matriarch of the colony, and she's now headbutting you. And she's the smallest of my cat family, the toughest, the fiercest, and she'll probably outlive a lot of us. She's one of those. She's a real tufty. So thank you for joining. I'll stop wittering around. As you know, I always witter. I will stop wittering now. So thank you so much for joining us for this interview. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. And I'm just going to move myself forward to turn the video off. As you know, I'm not very technically adept at all of this. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you've got any suggestions of people you would like me to interview, let me know and I'll see what I can organise. You never know. Whoever it is might say yes. Okay then, guys. Thanks so much and bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.